everyone. Good afternoon. I, Dr. Alpana Roy, welcome you all to the international webinar on managing mental health issues and emotional well-being organized by Internal Quality Assurance Cell of Prasanta Chandra Mahalanobis, Mahavidyalaya, Kolkata, West Bengal. I request all the participants to turn off your video and microphone for this webinar. I also request the participants, if they have any questions regarding the topic of mental health issues, write it in the chat of the Zoom meeting and your queries will be answered at the end of the session. Thank you for your kind cooperation. I want to extend my hearty and warm welcome to all the participants who have joined us from around the world in Facebook live stream. We are here today to discuss the topic mental health and emotional well-being. As we are all aware, just a few days back, a bright, smart, young, accomplished, highly talented, educated Bollywood actor Sushant Singh Rajput, who took his own life as he could not handle his depression. We were all moved by his acting in his movies like Kai Poche, Kedarnath, MS Dhoni, etc. We are all terribly shocked about the news of his sudden death because of mental health issues. Moreover, the people of the entire world are in mental agony, uncertainty, fear of death, anxiety in the ensuing pandemic caused by COVID-19. Managing professional work from home and also work for home, managing family simultaneously, intrusion of social media in daily life, all kinds of virtual relations can cause stress, depression, and different mental health issues to any one of us. Now, very much imperative that we build awareness of stress, anxiety issues, and different mental health problems to handle and overcome the same. There is no better person to educate us on the topic than Dr. Sarkhel, a world-renowned expert in the above subject. He was one of the senior consultants in the National Health Service in United Kingdom and also the director of Living Mind. It is dedicated to promote an integrated approach in the fields of mental health issues. It is my pleasure and my privilege to welcome Dr. Sarkhel in this webinar. We are extremely grateful, sir, that you have agreed to speak in the webinar. Thank you very much, sir, joining with us today. Now, may I request our respected principal, sir, Dr. Shaymal Karmakar, to welcome and introduce our speaker in today's webinar. Thank you. Sir, you please take over.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Shaymal Karmakar, Principal of Prasanta Chandra Mahalanobis Mahavidyalaya. It is my pleasure to welcome you all, guest speaker of the day, Dr. Arghya, Sarkhel, my fellow colleagues, and all the participants, including my dear students. The topic of the webinar is managing mental health and emotional well-being. Human civilization probably passing through the most critical juncture of this millennium, while its existence is being challenged by the emergence of a novel coronavirus, encroaching newer territories all over the world expeditiously. Coronavirus disease outbreak has been declared an international public health emergency. A wide fragment of world's population currently is primarily restricted to their homes owing to nationwide lockdowns and home confinement strategies. This unpredictable, fast-spreading infectious disease has been causing universal awareness, anxiety, and distress, all of which, according to WHO, natural psychological responses to the randomly changing condition. Adverse psychosomatic outcome among common people are nevertheless expected to increase significantly due to pandemic itself and also due to constant flow of readily available information and reinforced messaging obtained via online social networking services of almost all forms. As a consequence, rapidly expanding mass hysteria, panic regarding COVID-19 may beget enduring psychological health problems in public from all the socioeconomic domains, which could potentially be even more detrimental in the long run than the virus itself. We are scared for our future and also for our near and dear ones. This is where our topic of the seminar comes into play. It is of the highest priority to take care of the mental health and emotional well-being. It's to take care and make ourselves adapt to the new normal of the world. We are so glad to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Sarkhel, consultant psychiatrist and the founder director of Living Mind. Living Mind is a mental health organization based in London, UK. Its main aim is to have an integrated approach to mental health with RTMS, that is repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is state-of-the-art drug-free intervention for depression and many other mental disorders. Living Mind incorporates holistic method of treatment that may include mindfulness, acupuncture, reflexology, and lifestyle and dietary advice. TMS therapy is a non-invasive drug-free treatment for depression, chronic pain, addiction, migraine, and other disorders. We are grateful to Dr. Sarkhel for spending his valuable time to join our program. I believe we will be enriched with new ideas and measures which we should take in this pandemic period to boost up our mental health. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind introduction of the speaker of the day. And also, now I request Dr. Sarkhel. Please, sir, over to you.
May I convey my sincere thanks to Dr. Shaymal Karmakar for your very kind introduction, the principal, Dr. Alpana and Dr. Sonali Chaudhary for arranging this fantastic event, and of course the Prasanta Chandra Mahalanobis College for inviting me to be a guest speaker for this international webinar. I must say I'm honored and privileged to be part of this such a timely event. As you are probably aware from from the introduction, that I'm very passionate about mental health. It's a fantastic initiative to raise the awareness of mental health. There couldn't be any other better time, given the circumstances all around us. This is not a lecture. Just wanted to assure everyone that it's going to be a very, very interactive session, and it is extremely relevant not only about the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the mental health, as well as the recent very sad event that happened in the Bollywood industry. So before I spend any more time on this, if I could hand this over to Dr. Alpana, please.
Thank you very much for your kind address. And without further ado, I'm going to start question answer interactive session. So my first question is, what does mental health mean, and to what extent it is related to our well-being?
What a great question to start the event. I must start with how World Health Organization defines the health as a whole, not just about the mental health. And clearly WHO states that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and I emphasize the word mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. It has got an equal importance like physical health. So effectively, it's a function of our brain that could affect our emotion, our thoughts, our behavior. It helps us making everyday decisions in our lives, gives us that sense of autonomy, competence. So if we think about, we're all doing some activity, including participating in this webinar. Now, physically, we might be able to engage in, but if it is our mental functioning not right, then it will not give us any meaning. So this is due to our mental state that we start liking, disliking, appreciating. So what I would say, to summarize, that mental health is an integral part of our well-being.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
And now I want to ask you that what are the reasons of mental health problems?
yes, it's often seen as an enigma. And if I can bring some comparison with physical health, say for example, even COVID-19, someone's got a chest infection, someone's got a temperature, we go and do investigations, take it to the doctor, and then we say, yes, you have got this infection, virus, bacteria. Fortunately or unfortunately, in mental health, this is far more complicated than that. So when it comes to what causes mental health difficulties, we divide them into three separate segments. So the first one, what we call as vulnerable factors or predisposing factors. For example, it might run in the genes. We might have a family history. For example, depression, anxiety. We might have previous history of episodes of anxiety or depression. They might have some disease involving brain. So there could be some vulnerable factors. We might have different personalities. For example, right from our childhood, some of us a bit more worried than others. And that does make us slightly vulnerable to develop some of the mental health conditions in the future life. So the second set of factors, what we call triggers or precipitating factors. And this is the best time really to talk about it because COVID-19 has precipitated many mental health conditions in many of our lives. So low mood, increased anxiety, and what are the triggers? It could be life events, it could be health scare, it could be people were taking treatments for their mental health, whether therapy or medication, they stopped it. So there could be a number of triggering factors, but the life events is one of the very common ones, including physical health problems, for example, COVID-19. And then it comes to really the third set of factors, what we call maintaining factors. And I'll give you an example that if I'm feeling low in my mood, then I'm less inclined to do activities. If I do that, then I'll have less social stimulation. And if I have less social stimulation, that lowers our mood further. So we then run into a vicious cycle which maintains our low mood. So I hope that I'm able to explain to you that there are vulnerable factors, triggering factors, and maintaining factors. And it could happen at a biological level, like the genes, like the brain factors. It could happen at a psychosocial level, different psychological factors, personality, and the social circumstances. So in general, the psychological aspects is like a style of thinking pattern. It's influenced by our experiences in life as we are growing from our childhood into adult life, our personality. And as we talked about, the life events do have a significant impact. So these are some of the reasons why mental health problems can occur through different angles, if you like.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarkhel. Dr. Sarkhel, now we want to know from you, what are the symptoms of deterioration of mental health?
Yes, so now this is very important because especially these days, it is important to spot some of the early warning signs, if you like, that when can we see that perhaps our mental health needs to be looked after a bit more. So we then can think about in terms of the mood. Say, for example, we are feeling a bit low. Now, one can say, well, things are bad all around, receiving all the number of deaths to COVID and all. Of course, one is almost entitled, quite rightly feeling low. But is that persistent? Is it pervasive? Is it feeling all the time? Is it affecting our work? So that would give us an idea whether that low mood simply as a normal response to the current pandemic, or is it a bit more than that? And it's not just low. Sometimes some of the mental disorders can make us excessively high, elated. People might start thinking they have got special powers. And that's all due to some of the functioning of the brain gets wrong. So, and then it comes to the thoughts. And it's probably best to discuss about the anxiety, especially around this time. We have a tendency to think about the worst case scenario, thinking about some of our near and dear ones might have gone into hospital, might be tested positive. What will happen to me? What will happen to my life? What will happen to if I lose my job? What will happen to my family members, my near and dear ones? And immediately we can get into this worst case scenario thinking, getting very preoccupied with the thoughts. Sometimes can get excessive suspicious thoughts, obsessional thinking, trying to get rid of the thoughts from our head, but unable to do so. And that results in changing our behavior. We might get frightened of going to the jobs, working from home. That's the challenge with our existing anxiety, existing low mood. And not just that, not to forget, although it might be a mental health condition, it must have an implication on the physical health side. So poor concentration, disturbances in the sleep, appetite, poor energy. So physical health is significantly impacted by the mental health conditions. And the last but not the least, this is not just about the symptoms. This set of symptoms, either in combination or in isolation, lead on to poor functioning in the community, in our social life, in the school, college, or university, where we are working. Perhaps our functioning is compromised. So adding the symptoms and then that leading to poor functioning, that's a sign of deterioration of our mental health. So I hope that I've summed it up at the end.
Very beautifully explained.
Thank you.
My next question is related to the present pandemic situation due to COVID-19.
Sure.
Just we want to know who suffers the most mental health issues during the pandemic period.
And yes, to start off with, I would say that we should not assume that any of us is immune to mental health conditions. So it can affect anyone, can affect anyone at any time. So it could affect children, adults, elderly, but of course in different ways. It could be people who have got history of mental health problems before, or this could be the first episode. So yes, it could affect anyone at any time, really. And I suppose that, in the current circumstances, particularly in relation to, as we mentioned in the beginning, the death of actor Sushant Singh Rajput, I want to just say a few words. It's important to help create an environment which will support us rather than criticizing us, which will displace the fear rather than make us more skeptical. It should not judge us. Having mental illness is not anyone's fault, is not anyone's weakness. Just like people with diabetes or high blood pressure is not deemed to be of someone's weakness. Similarly, having mental health problems should not be seen as someone's weak personality. Because I've seen those news coming across in various social media platforms that he or she was weak. It's nothing to do with a weakness. It's simply a weak illness that was not treated properly and perhaps could be prevented. So a supportive atmosphere, displacing fear, non-judgmental approach, and people making harshful comments, that's not very helpful. And the other thing as well, whatever we do in our life, there are bound to be successes and failure. But the failure in aspects of the life does not mean life is not worth living. So it is very important to use our strengths to instill the hope. And it's not just ours, it's everyone's responsibility in the community to help ourselves and to others to come forward, start talking about emotional difficulties like we are doing it now. We should facilitate seeking professional help if needed, because treatments are available and they are effective. And hence, these fatal outcomes are not solutions. They can be potentially prevented, but we should all be responsible. We should all come forward and help each other.
Very relevant answer, sir. Now we have received many questions from the speaker of the day in the chat box, but due to the constraint of time, few of them are selected.
Sure.
Dr. Tithi Chatterjee from Faculty of West Bengal State University, she asked a question. According to the data of the World Health Organization in 2018, India ranks 18 among 232 countries in the world in youth suicide rate. In this context, do you believe that the rigid, conventional and patriarchal nature of Indian social system plays a role in this? Sir,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, very good question. Um, so I'd like to start talking about cultural and societal aspects. They play a huge role, and every society is different. Every culture is very different. Indian culture might be very different from, even other Asian cultures, say for example, or of course from Western cultures. So it's important to have some observation, have some reflection. But I want to start with some figures that India's overall suicide rate is around 16.5 per 100,000 population per year. And that's actually highest in the South Asia and is the sixth highest in the world. Male and female is around 2 to 1. So males tend to suffer twice as much as female. So in terms of the patriarchy, as we understand that typically men have primary power in the society, predominance in the leadership, social privileges, politics, moral authority, control over property and money. So men try and live up to this expectation from the society. And so-called success is judged from these domains. So if we can't perform, that is seen as a failure. It deepens the sense of isolation. So if we can't perform, it's seen as a failure. The thoughts about oneself and the world seem to be very doom and gloom. It affects our self-esteem, motivation goes down, mood becomes low. And coming back to the rigidity, yes. So we need more flexibility. What was seen as a right or appropriate centuries ago is perhaps to be appreciated differently now. The intergenerational communication is one of the key issues we need to work on. Otherwise, it creates frustration, irritability, leading on to anxiety and depression. So you can see clearly how a patriarchal society can have a significant impact, particularly with this rigid structure on people's mental health these days. So in terms of solutions, I suggest that accepting different viewpoints, we can have an adult discussion. People can have different choices, not one size fits all. Learning to agree to disagree, not to impose on others. You rather have dialogue and free-flowing communications. And this is probably the best part to talk about, the mindfulness that brings compassion, acceptance, self-love, self-care. So to cultivate those in doing various exercises. There's a video already sent to most all the participants, and I mentioned about one of my albums called Mindful Living. Feel free to use it. It's free on the YouTube and it's all every digital platforms. But these can be exercised regularly, particularly during this difficult time. So I hope that I answered your question about what are the problems and how perhaps we can go about in resolving these issues.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I'm going back to my original questions. If in our close family member and a very close friend having mental problems, how shall we handle him or her?
So acceptance is the key word. We must learn to start accepting, and we should treat the mental health as the same way as we treat a physical health problem. So this is a fundamental. Now, although we talk about mental health, we must accept this is actually the physiological changes in the brain that happen. So it's not all in the mind. It's not we are making it up. So repeated reassurances if needed, sharing the difficulties at the family level. And believe me, it does unburden the distress. Should avoid criticism, should avoid making judgmental comments, and guiding towards the self-help perhaps. For example, as I said, mindfulness, if needed, professional help, because that's available. So that's one aspect. But not to forget, family members, friends, they themselves need to look after their own emotional well-being. Unless we are there for us, we won't be there for others. So it's important to look into the two aspects.
Okay, thank you. There is another question from audience, Dr. Stigma Chatterjee, the faculty of Beratapa College. She wants to know that can you give any advice about elderly people who are caged in their home due to COVID pandemic?
Yes, certainly, and that's one of my specialties. I treat many elderly psychiatric patients, including patients suffering from dementia. It's a very, very difficult time, whether we have mental health problems or not, particularly in the elderly population. So it's important to start accepting and empathizing with them that it's a difficult time. I mean, they have seen more of life than younger generation. So there might remain a tendency to think about the worst case scenario, they might think their life is numbered to days or weeks or years. And so I'll suggest that it's important to have a discussion, sharing their difficulties rather than forcing them to change their thinking. If they watch television or engage in social media, perhaps not just looking into the news or the worst news about the COVID deaths and etc., thinking about other activities, for example, music programs or other quiz programs, encouraging to engage in this kind of news, needing repeated reassurance, addressing the feeling of helplessness. And that will create a sense of belonging, that they are the part of the society. So facilitating communication is a key issue. It's activities, mental activities, for example, reading, listening to music, even physical activity, these are the different ways one can perhaps help the elderly population who feel that they're caged in the home due to the COVID, but actually we still need to instill the hope. They are very much part and parcel of our society, and we do value them, we do respect them.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sarkhel, we know that in foreign countries, people suffering from mental health issues, usually they go to the therapist or the psychiatrist. But in India, people are ashamed to go to the therapist. Is there any reason for people to feel insecure about expressing their mental health issues or problems?
I think what we're talking about here really is stigma. All around the world, we are battling, we are fighting with the stigma against mental health. Perhaps it's a bit more in India and Asia than Western world, but it's a problem across the world. So coming back to the issue that we should treat mental health same as a physical health problem, there are a number of myths around the mental illnesses. For example, they are weak, is their problem, the family is seen very differently, they're bad, people judge, but that's not true at all. That's completely incorrect. So, for example, if someone goes on antidepressants, or he'll be addicted, it will change your personality. No, it does not change anyone's personality. They are not addictive. In fact, they are far, far more safer drugs than many other drugs that we take for our physical health problems. So it's important not to categorize as a sign of weakness. Person should not be blamed. It's okay to seek help. And as a society, we have a responsibility to help create that atmosphere around us where we all feel supported and take the accept to help. And hence, doing these webinars, perhaps doing many more events like that virtually, and when the time permits, then physically, discussing in the family openly that it's okay not to be okay mentally. The help is available. And that's the message really we all ought to give, whether through the university, college, employment section, in the school, every part of the society, we should start talking about it and instill hope in people that mental health, illness, or mental health should be valued equally as physical health, should ask for help. If treatment is needed, we should facilitate that and help others.
We should overcome this type of stigma. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And now I want to ask you that what are the impacts of COVID-19 on our mental health?
Yes, amazing. When I think about it, it's only a little virus that you can't even see in a proper microscope. You need an electron microscope to see it. And yet it has just turned the world upside down. So it has brought a lot of sudden and unexpected changes in our routine, which is affecting every aspect of our life. Working from home, children studying from home, not being able to see each other physically, not being able to see our loved ones, near and dear ones, suddenly having to do our normal work in a different way. For example, even now, we could have done that physically, but because of the COVID-19, everyone has to adapt to do it virtually. So you can see how it has got impact, and purely because of this huge change in our routine, other aspect, coping becomes very, very difficult, puts strain on our mind. It starts pushing us how much we can stretch ourselves. Unfortunately, many people have lost their jobs. that has burdened the family. It's affecting education, examinations being cancelled, as you know better than me, affecting, anxiety amongst the students and teachers. So style of thinking starts getting affected. And if that gets affected day in and day out, it affects the mood, increases the anxiety, increases preoccupation with more specific intrusive thoughts. For example, fear of contamination with COVID, for example. Shall I go to the market? Shall I wear gloves? Of course, we have to take all the precautions. But when that takes over our life, that becomes a problem. Excessive ritualistic behavior. Instead of washing hands appropriately, few times, maybe washing hands 100 times in a day. And clearly that is pathological. So you can see how mental health can be affected. Our sleep, appetite, energy, they all get disturbed. So it's important going back to the basic, looking back what we can do to help ourselves first, as we talked about, sharing with the near and dear ones if we can trust someone, and the next step, of course, to seek professional help, because help is available and help is effective.
Obviously. Now I have taken another question from the chat box.
Sure.
Dr. Somdatta Ghoshkar, faculty of PCMM, our college, he has asked that how can students and teachers take care of their mental health and perform well in their work life? It's a teacher-related and student-related questions to you, sir.
Yes. Teaching profession as well as from student side to start accepting the problems that we are all going through a very difficult, turbulent time. We're all in the same boat. So communication has to be two-way. It has to be a trusting communication, respecting each other's views, understanding the needs are very different, perspectives are different. On one hand, teachers might be thinking about how to use the current environment to facilitate the lessons, whereas students might be worried about the exams getting cancelled, anxiety about the results, the future, uncertainty. So it's very important to reassuring each other that we're all trying to do our best. And one thing I would say, that rather than seeing as necessarily an environment full of fear, try and see if we can take that into an opportunity. Say, for example, that now probably geography is not a problem wherever we are. You don't have to go to school or college, but the virtual platforms. And it's, we are very thankful and grateful. We are not in 1950s or 60s where the internet isn't developed. So now the WhatsApp, FaceTime, Zoom, there are so many platforms we can connect to each other in no time. So using that as an opportunity. And I would say that reassurance is very good, but it's very important not to generate a false hope, being realistic. What can be done, what cannot be done, accepting the limitations and helping students to accept the reality in a very empathic manner. And of course, I suppose may not be just related to other employment, but even here, WFH is a new abbreviation we are very familiar with, and is working from home. But I do know that for can be replaced by from at times. So it becomes working from home. So it's a different pressure. How can I still do the lessons? How can I still do the lesson plan where my child is there and I need to look after the child? I need to look after my partner. So it's a different kind of pressure. And that is where the transparent communication, mutual trust, accepting the limitation, and yet trying to find a solution rather than still sticking to a very rigid structure, what we did in the pre-COVID period. So I hope that I've given some principles about how we can look after the mental health and perform well. And again, maybe mixing the teaching with some activities or mixing students' learning with some other activities, the hobbies and interests. So make the teaching a bit more less pressured, if you like, or the learning process less pressured.
New learning process, we are going through this. And there is another question for you. Siddharth Roy from
Sure.
IIM Calcutta. He wants to know that he might be a teenager. What can a teenager do to improve their mental health during the pandemic period?
As we talked about before, that it can affect anyone. So extremes of age, we talked about old age. Now we're talking about the other extremes of the age, so children. I'll start with the communication because that is the key beat where things can go wrong. So it's very important to communicate with the children, whatever age group they are, at their level. children do understand. Maybe some need a bit more body language, some need other words, depending on the maturity. And believe me that children are probably much more mature than what we think they are. So it's very important to respect their views, listen to them, what they're trying to say, giving time to them, not to reject, not to dismiss it. If difficult, get help from the family, a friend, or even professionals. So being realistic, not to mystify it, that COVID-19 is some sort of a gimmick or something. Be realistic, but be truthful, but of course, needing reassurance with the safety. So that would be the first approach. So the discussion from the parents or by the grandparents, it should be a very solution-oriented discussion instead of problem-oriented. We accept the problems, but solutions are around. Good example is we talk about number of deaths. We hardly talk about most of the people actually survive COVID-19. We hardly talk about it because media doesn't portray that. So it's important when you talk to the children, rather than just giving the scary news about the death, is very important to reassure them, but being realistic that yes, it can be fatal. And of course, depends on the maturity. So that's one aspect, the communication. Of course, the routine is completely out of the order now. So using social distancing measures, getting to see their friends, using FaceTime, WhatsApp, whatever communication is available, of course, with the parent supervision or guidance. So again, you can see you can turn that to your advantage even in this difficult time. And to keep the routine as close as possible to the pre-COVID period. For example, still schooling, but from home. Very similar routine as if they are going to school. So try and have the timetable. Communication with teachers over phone or video if that's needed. Again, getting that support, getting them to see their friends. And if we start seeing that education or growth are affected, their behavior has become slightly not normal, then not to be shying away to get professional help. Think about it. If a child has physical health problem, we rush to a child specialist. Why not a mental health professional, psychologist or psychiatrist if there's a mental health issues? So again, we need to tackle the stigma.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, the next question, how do we manage our anxiety levels and the fear of uncertainty during this pandemic period?
We'll start from the self-help. So I'm not saying as soon as we get anxious, we need to rush to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. There are various self-help measures that we can take. For example, engaging in activities of our interests, doing physical exercise, mindfulness exercise. There are many more what we call cognitive behavior therapy, a particular therapy that helps us teach the connection between our thinking, our behavior, challenging our catastrophic thoughts by differentiating between what are the facts and what are the feelings. To strengthen our social communication, be aware using the information on social media very appropriately. And of course, if the self-help is not enough, we might need professional help from psychologists, counselors, or by psychiatrists. Sometimes medications are needed. And again, coming back to the point, if it is needed, under the supervision of a psychiatrist, they are safe, provided it's monitored by psychiatrists on a regular basis. But I would strongly suggest that talking therapy that helps understand the connections between the thoughts, emotions, actions, it helps us to learn a much more constructive coping strategies. It instills hopes. So essentially, those are the two aspects. So start with self-help, if not getting professional help with talking therapy and or medication as prescribed or advised by psychiatrists. Okay?
The Mental Health Awareness Week was celebrated between the 18th to 24th of May 2020, and the theme was kindness. Can you please put on some lights in this respect, sir?
Kindness is one of the key pillars of mindfulness. It's almost an antidote to isolation. It creates a sense of belonging. It's a thread that makes the communication to our inner world and outer world much more soothing. The kindness brings fresh perspectives and deepens the friendships. And cultivating that kindness will help us feeling not so isolated. So once we nurture the self-kindness, our inner fight slowly fades. Treat kindness as your companion, friend, and if it improves your self-esteem, try to be compassionate and living in the present. Communication and relation with ourselves and to others, if that can be done through that thread of kindness. And again, if we find it difficult, it can be nurtured by doing specific mindfulness exercises. And one of them actually is still in my album, as I said, is freely available, because sometimes in this difficult period, especially this pandemic, some of us might find it a bit difficult to be kind. Some of them, unfortunately, due to their impatience, can be unkind to us, and that can affect. So it's very important to cultivate this kindness within ourselves and bring that thread of kindness to the outside world when we start communicating.
Now I come to the treatment-related questions. What are the different approaches to get rid of mental health problems?
I'll first suggest that sometimes we might have expectation that we will get rid of the mental health problems. I'll probably rephrase it to say, how can we manage mental health problems? And I'll tell you why. For example, if I go to a doctor for my diabetes and I'm given insulin, we still need to continue that in spite of my blood sugar is stable, because it is keeping us in check. It maintains our stability. Same with the high blood pressure. So very similarly, it is important to focus on how we can manage our mental health problems. And that can be done through various approaches. The first approach, I would say, psychological approach, which is we talked about the different kinds of talking therapy through psychologists or counselors. The other aspects would be biological approach, which will be medications, for example, and we'll talk to a drug-free approach in a minute. And also not to forget the social approach, social intervention, particularly now, social isolation is one of the key factors that's maintaining our ill mental health. So there are different ways we can approach and manage our mental health problems. And it's very important is a combination that works best rather than one in isolation.
There is another question from the audience.
Sure.
Dr. Shuchita Dotto Shaha, she wants to know that are introverts more depressed than others?
Right. So short answer to that, no. When we talk about introvert, we are talking about someone's personality. And we are all born with different types of personality. Some of them want to be a bit more reserved, and we use the phrase introvert. But yes, people being introvert, they have difficulty in communicating or expressing their emotion. And it does make them vulnerable to develop anxiety and depression in the future, particularly if any stressful event comes along. But in general, introvert, they are not depressed. That is their normal personality. It's just they are expressing in a different way and they're finding it very difficult to express themselves. But being introvert, that does not mean they're depressed. So they still have the same depressive symptoms if they will develop depression. For example, persistent low mood, loss of appetite, loss of motivation. But just being introvert, that only reflects their personality. It does not reflect any mental illness.
Dr. Sarkhel, you are a very specialist in transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is a drug-free intervention for depression. Sir, you please put on some, how does this technique improve our mental health?
Right. So this is one of the fairly modern approaches in mental health. This is a completely drug-free approach, as you said in the beginning, to treat depression, anxiety, and many other disorders. What happens is people who probably have some background of physics, they will know that there is a law called Faraday's law. Essentially what happens, the magnetic energy gets transmitted into electrical energy. So this particular treatment actually just exploits that theory, the Faraday's law. So a magnetic coil is placed on the front part of the brain around 45-degree angle. So these magnetic pulses, when they're transmitted through the skull into the brain, it gets converted into electrical energy inside the brain to a specific circuit that is responsible for depression. The good news is we do not need any sedation or anesthesia. Patients are fully awake during the treatment. They can read newspaper, they can talk to the doctor, and there is absolutely no effect on their bad effect or on adverse effect on their memory. Only time we cannot do those treatments if there are metal plates inside our head or face from any previous operation, because you can imagine it's a strong magnet, it can pull out those metal plates. But otherwise, it's a fairly safe treatment. It's very intensive, needs 5 treatments per week for 6 weeks for depression. And because now we know what circuits are actually involved in depression. Again, it tells us that it is not just all in the mind. There are actually physiological changes, pathological changes happen inside the brain. If you want to know more, you can always look at the video, and I'm aware that video has been sent to all the participants at the time of your registration, and you can see that how it is, how we are conducting TMS in that was our video from our London clinic, and the response rate is fantastic. Almost 60 to 70% patients respond to this treatment. Yes, it's expensive, but it does do the job. And it's, as I said, that there are absolutely almost no side effects really, apart from mild tiredness and mild headache at times, which does not even need medication. So yes, it's a repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation, completely drug-free approach, and yet very, very effective.
Sir, there is also another question asked by Shobhik Mondol in the chat box. Is insomnia a symptom of mental health issue, and why does it happen?
We already touched on that insomnia on its own is not a mental health issue, because sleep can be problematic due to various reasons. It could be that we are very tired. We could have some physical health problems. It could be we are doing night shifts or different shift working. But of course, insomnia can be a recognized symptom of many, many mental disorders, particularly anxiety and depression. And it can affect in slightly different way. So say, for example, in depression, sometimes we struggle to get off to sleep. Sometimes we struggle to maintain our sleep. And sometimes we wake up very early in the morning. So sleep gets affected in mental health in different ways. And in anxiety, sometimes we are full of thoughts in our head all the time. It's just find it difficult to switch off and we can't get off to sleep. But insomnia on its own does not mean that it's a mental health issue. So it's very important to do a proper assessment, making sure there are no other causes. But yes, it can be due to depression and anxiety. If it is, doing the treatment for the primary condition will help resolve insomnia. And another aspect I will say about the insomnia particularly is mindfulness is a great, great approach to address just insomnia on its own. There's a particular scan exercise I'll refer called body scan exercise. It's the first track in my album. If you could start doing that, it's a 20 to 30 minutes track just before you go to bed. Believe me, after 6-7 weeks, you will see a difference in your sleep quality. So mindfulness, I will strongly advocate for insomnia.
We are near the end of the session. I want to ask you, what should we practice to keep our mind healthy?
I'll start with the thoughts that hopefully after this discussion, we should start observing sometimes, just giving a bit of time for us, reflect on our thoughts, self-monitoring from time to time, not excessively. Make sure that we get stimulation from different sources, home, family, work, friends or colleagues, and building a support network. People we can trust, we can confide in. Engaging in different activities, physical and mental activities, and making sure that our activities are diverse. And the next thing I would say, the lifestyle. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to look into our lifestyle. So healthy diet, managing stress, if needed, getting help from professionals, regular mindfulness exercise, acceptance, compassion, nurturing the kindness that we talked about. This will all help towards building the resilience and will keep our mind healthy. And I must finish off with in this question about, we talked about what we should do, But I think we should also touch what we shouldn't do. And there are a few don'ts, I would say. For example, excessive consumption of alcohol. That is not good for your mental health. Avoiding drugs like cannabis, etc. is very important to avoid that. That is not good for our mental health. Avoiding prolonged activities that could lead to physical and mental fatigue. So if we can think about some of the do's and don'ts, I think it will help us to keep our mind as healthy as possible.
Thank you very much. Just last question to you. It's also question from audience. Vishwadip, he has asked you, how do I understand when my sadness or anxiety level is going beyond the acceptable limit? He has written that I believe sadness or anxiety is normal for a human being up to a certain limit, beyond which it may create troubles.
I think that, thank you, whoever asked the question. I think you partly answered your own question, which is great. But yes, so anxiety, depression, or sadness, this can be a normal response to sudden change in our life, whether it's a COVID, whether loss of near and dear ones. So anxiety, sadness on their own is not a sign of mental illness. Now, when can we start thinking? Has it been prolonged? Has it been going on for days and days? Is it nothing in my life excites me? Nothing gives me pleasure? Has it started affecting my sleep, appetite? Is my motivation down all the time? Not just in the morning or evening, I'm absolutely fine. So there is a tendency to become a prolonged low mood, pervasive low mood. Things that I used to enjoy, I'm losing those. Feeling very helpless, hopeless, having physical symptoms, as we said. So those are the telltale signs where we can think about, yes, it is not just a normal response, it is beyond it, and we need to think about maybe discussing. Start with the self-help. If not, please ask for professional help. Help is available, help is effective.
If participants want to contact you to consult their problems, how shall we reach out to you?
We have got a website, livingmind.co.uk. Our website is fairly comprehensive, and in the website, all the contact details are there. Apart from that, we have got an email address, info@livingmind.co.uk. There is a mobile telephone number in UK. I hope I get it right this time. So obviously, +44 079 444 08234, but it's all there in the website. So you can drop us an email, you can WhatsApp us or phone us. You can go to the website where there is a communication box. You can just submit your query online, and we'll try our best to get back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Sarkhel, for such wonderful, thought-provoking session with us. We are all enlightened with your erudition. Our interaction session with the speaker has come to an end. Thank you. We are very much thankful to the speaker, Dr. Sarkhel, as he has taken out his time for us from his busy schedule, and has shared his thoughts and has explained very clearly and lucidly how should we keep our mind free from stress, anxiety, stigma, mental agony, with the help of positivity, mindfulness, kindness, RTMS techniques, self-help, and helping others, and also can take the professional help if needed. There is no doubt, after listening to him, we are all informed and aware of such prevalent problem plaguing us. Thank you, sir, once again for being with us.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to the viewers and listeners who have joined with us in the webinar. Stay safe. And now I request our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Kamala Mitra, to give a vote of thanks and mark the end of the webinar.
Good afternoon to all. Privileged to have been asked to give vote of thanks. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our honorable speaker, Dr. Arghya Sarkhel, Director of Living Mind. We are very much thankful to you, sir, for your valuable interactive session. I may like to express my sincere thanks to respected Principal, Dr. Shaymal Karmakar, for providing us continuous encouragement to organize such an webinar. I must mention deep sense of appreciation to Dr. Alpana Roy, our IQAC member, for her continuous effort which made this event possible. I, on behalf of organizing committee of this webinar, give special thanks to entire technical team. Finally, I would like to thank our most valued participants who have turned up in such a great number. Otherwise, this webinar could not have been possible. We all enjoyed this session very much. And finally, thank you to all.
Thank you.
My name is Sarkhel. My husband, Dr. Sarkhel, and I co-founded Living Mind, a private mental health consultancy. We are very grateful and glad to share that we have helped many people with mental health illnesses.
Hello, my name is Dr. Sarkhel. I'm a consultant psychiatrist and founder director of Living Mind. At Living Mind, we strongly believe in integrated approach when it comes to assessment and management of mental health disorders.
Whether they are children, adults, or elderly population. What I mean by integrated approach is, for example, some of them are treated with medications, some of them might need talking therapy, some of our service users needed combination of medicine as well as talking therapy. But outside all of that, we also believe in lifestyle, diet, complementary therapies like reflexology, acupuncture, and mindfulness. So it is very close to our heart that when it comes to mental health, we should offer our service users the range of treatments that's available and try to understand what is the meaning behind their symptoms. So our aim remains not just to control or treat their symptoms, but make sure that improvement in their mental state leads on to an improved functioning in their social life as well as in their occupational life.
We treat a range of mental disorders: depression, anxiety, OCD, ADHD, eating disorder, schizophrenia, addiction, and many more.
We specialise in assessments for dementia. Our online video consultations are safe and secure.
We use an integrated approach where we combine orthodox medicine with complementary therapies, talking therapy, as well as giving advice on diet and lifestyle. I am a qualified reflexologist. I have treated many mental health patients with anxiety, depression, insomnia, and stress.
Living Mind incorporates mindfulness in most of our treatments of mental disorders. I'm very passionate about the pillars of mindfulness like acceptance, gratitude, thankfulness. We try and explore how best we can use the mindfulness exercises and try and develop a mindfulness approach in our service users' lives in general. When it comes to difficult situations, when outside stressors are not going to change very much, mindfulness gives us a fantastic platform to deal with these difficulties. Please visit our mindfulness album called Mindful Living, where there are 10 tracks. Few tracks are very specific about mood, anxiety, even pain management. One of the tracks I also focused on self-love, self-care, and self-kindness. The album is available in most of the digital music platforms. Hope you found those exercises helpful.
We specialize in RTMS, repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation. This treatment has helped many patients recover from severe depression, anxiety, OCD, and many other mental illnesses.
Please visit our website livingmind.co.uk, where you will see the details about RTMS. And if you're interested to know more, please do not hesitate to pick up the phone. I'm more than happy to discuss and talk you through over the telephone before you make the appointment.
I've had depression on and off since I was about 13 years old. I've had various spells of treatment for it and taken various different medications for it. I'm not sure I've ever sort of been totally, I don't know, it's hard to explain really, but I've definitely struggled with it on and off for most of my adult life. It is quite like a numbing condition, like you're not really very excited about anything, you're not really very engaged with anything. This year has really been the year I sort of said to myself, I have to, acknowledge this and try and do something about it.
All right, good morning, Jen.
Good morning.
Hello.
How are you?
How are you? All right?
I'm okay.
Yeah? How are you feeling in general?
I've been feeling pretty good this week.
Right.
I wanted to find an alternative to antidepressant medication because I found they came with some quite serious side effects. Not for everybody, but for me, like I found that it wasn't really working for me, so I wanted to have a drug-free treatment. And that's how I came across RTMS. It stands for Repetitive Transcranial Magnetic Stimulation. So my understanding of it is that they basically put this minor pulse through your brain to stimulate your neurons, I think, to sort of make them a bit more active, maybe build stronger connections. I'm not totally sure exactly how it works, but it does seem to.
So I'm just going to explain to you today the course of the treatment. So I'm going to put your cap and I'm going to take some measurement just to make sure cap is in the right place so that I can be very precise about the treatment location. So here is the treatment coil. It's essentially a magnetic coil and that's the stimulator. So it's going to give some magnetic pulses to the frontal cortex of your brain because that's what is responsible for most of the depressive symptoms. The treatment would last for approximately 19 minutes. And all you could hear, there's a pause, there's a pause. There will be 3000 pulses, but there will be a gap of 11 seconds between each train. Okay? And it'll sound a bit like, it's not painful, it's not uncomfortable, but all you could hear just like almost like a woodpecking noise. And once Jen is ready, then I'll start the treatment. Okay? You're all right, yes?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. 1, 2, 3.
Start.
Right. You're feeling good?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So,
It's very relaxing.
very relaxing. Good. It's not painful, is it?
No, it's not painful.
No.
I've definitely noticed there has been like quite a strong effect after each treatment. So like there has been some times where I felt like pretty depressed going in, like I hadn't really been doing anything, not really talking to anyone a lot, not really sort of looking after myself properly. And then I've gone in, had this treatment and kind of immediately felt, I don't know, just I guess more cheerful. I also noticed that maybe it sounds a bit strange, but I could sort of appreciate music a bit more deeply after I've left a session.
You know, the reason I got interested in delivering RTMS is the fact that there's an opportunity that you may not have to take antidepressant, and all the side effects that normally patients might experience, like weight gain, excessive sleep, poor energy, sexual dysfunction, those are absolutely not present with RTMS. Yes, it's a commitment because 5 sessions a week, but I do think if you think about the longer term, 5 to 6 weeks of intensive treatment, and if that helps you to recover from depression fully, I suppose, you know, in the longer term it's cost effective, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that any treatment is going to be a total cure for everything. It's definitely been helpful, and it's definitely been helpful.
You know, it's obvious that you are on the right direction, you know, the road to recovery.
I think it definitely has been a good thing overall. Like, I'm not taking medication at the moment, and that was one of the things I wanted to do. Like, I came off medication when I started having this treatment. So yeah, that's pretty I suppose that speaks for itself, that it must have had quite a beneficial effect that I'm, functioning.
Living Mind has clinics in London, Essex and Birmingham, making lives meaningful.